Right, let's move on then to Total Recall.
So, Mr. Verhoeven stuck with the science fiction genre for his next project, an adaptation of the Philip K. Dick short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. A strong contender for the best adaptation of the writer's work, and a thoroughly bloody good romp in its own right. The film stars, as you likely know, we're certainly not beginning with the more obscure entries in Mr. Verhoeven's canon. The film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as Red Planet-obsessed construction worker Douglas Quaid, who visits a company called Recall in order to have a memory of a trip to Mars implanted in his mind, only to have this transaction expose him as an actual spy who's actually been to actual Mars. This results in many people actually trying to actually kill him, so you must get his ass to actual Mars and find out what the actual hell is actually happening. On Mars, Quaid, who is, in actuality, Hauser, an agent of Martian Administrator Velos Cohagen, meets with a band of rebels who believe the mysterious alien technology discovered inside one of Cohagen's mines, this technology being a McGuffinium-powered planet kettle, holds the key to Cohagen's overthrow and the freeing of the inhabitants of Mars from his tyranny. Or does it? This may all be happening inside Quaid's mind, something a doctor from Recall tries to convince him of. 30 years on, some of Total Recall's effects look a bit ropey, though perhaps not as bad as you might expect, and the things that matter, the performances, the pacing, the plot, and indeed other things that don't even begin with P, all hold up very well. Verhoeven's typical excess is here, and it fits, and there's also humour throughout. Crucially too, though neither could be considered the greatest of actors, both the protagonist and antagonist are charismatic and entertaining, with Schwarzenegger in particular giving a possible career best performance. Total Recall is principally an action film, and that's a label it wears proudly and well. For a mainstream science fiction film though, but perhaps not surprisingly given its source, there is some depth in here in regards to notions of nature versus nurture and questions of what constitutes reality. It is possible to have a discussion, which we perhaps will in a few moments, of whether or not the events within the film actually happened, or were all actually inside of Doug's head as he suffered a mental collapse within the confines of Recall. There's plenty to suggest both throughout. Both the alien planet Kettle and Rachel Ticotin's Melina look suspiciously like the images displayed to Quaid before his memory implant. But then, he did also dream about Melina before going there. The fade to white at the end is film shorthand for waking from a dream. A number of characters throughout predict exactly how the plot will proceed, and there are non-diegetic musical cues related to the memory implant company Recall. None of which I buy as it happens, as I am firmly in the It All Happened camp, most principally because of the numerous scenes of characters whose actions and conversations the audience sees, but Quaid doesn't and couldn't. Oh, and also that the whole memory implant business doesn't make a lick of sense, and would require time to be missing from a person's life, and for not one person in the entire world to ever say anything that contradicted the implanted memory, such as, "You didn't go to Mars, you were at work with me," etc. Let alone the Quaid specific, "You know you're not actually a spy, right? But that breaks the entire film, so shh, keep that one under your hat." Also, there's nothing in this film that is as impossible to believe, nor as stupid as a giant elevator that, for some reason, goes through the centre of the earth. But that's a thing for a film that doesn't exist, so we can forget about that. To return to the point at hand, the fact, though, that A, you could have such conversations about a blockbuster film like this, and B, would actually want to, shows why Total Recall rightly continues to be regarded as one of the greatest science fiction films of all time, and why there was no need for a ludicrous, brain-dead, point-missing, hack-directed, piss-poor remake, so it's good that nobody made that one.
It was just an implant put into your brain by the Recall Corporation. No one can convince you that it actually existed. Yes, I love this film now. I love this film when I spoke about it last a few years back when I did that Mars podcast episode, and I've loved it since I first saw it back in The Mists of Time, I believe it was. It is just brilliant stuff. It's peak Arnie. but it's peak Arnie attached to an actual plot that's not just Arnie shoots some people. So, it wins on a number of axes. It's just a fantastic piece of work. It's so tremendously entertaining. So many great lines. I could blab about Mars for years. It's just incredibly entertaining stuff. It's really well paced. It's really well delivered. Again, as you know, Arnie, not the world's best thespian, but he really delivers what he needs to do here, and it's supported by a cast that's a supporting cast that, again, none of them individually stand out as being brilliant, with the exception of Ronny Cox, I guess, but they all kind of sell it really well, and the world kind of makes sense. It feels like it's a world that's been more or less thought out, at least well enough for what it needs to do for the confines of the film. So it just kind of really does a really good job of suckering you in and getting you along for the ride, like a Johnny Cab does. It's all just a really, really great experience. I was heartily enjoying my time with it again, and this is a time that I've spent with it conservatively, like a couple of dozen times, I guess. It's Total Recall is one of my most watched films. I love it. It's still great to this day, and if you somehow haven't seen it, you should definitely watch. It is very, very good. Very good.
Yeah, I wasn't on that Mars episode, so I'd forgotten it was on that, but that means we really could blab about Mars for a long time, because this is now the third time we've covered on this podcast.
Yes.
Because it was also in the Arnie episode.
It's just the best. It's the best Arnie film. Yeah.
We do like Total Recall.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's the only film we've talked about in 3 different episodes,
yes.
So yes, it's got that singular distinction. Had I anything else to add to that? I don't think so. I just think it's really good. Yeah, Ronny Cox is fun. And I think I mentioned this when we talked about it in the Arnold Schwarzenegger episode, but he's a B-movie actor, and that's fine, and he has been some absolute garbage, like the 1990 version of Captain America, the truly terrible one with the rubber ears inside of the hat for reasons. But the stuff he's done, particularly with Paul Verhoeven, he's been great. He's just... Again, like Kurtwood Smith in RoboCop, there's a swagger to him.
Yeah.
His motivations are understandable. He's not just a megalomaniac, and he's an interesting villain. Perhaps a bit less so than Boddicker, although his own role in RoboCop. Michael Ironside's good. Sharon Stone's good. There's nobody in this film really who's like a top tier thespian or anything, but everybody's given really good performances. Yeah, it's just a fantastically entertaining film. Yeah,
it's maybe peak Verhoeven in the way that he can take something that is on the surface a relatively silly concept and actually make it fairly smart. It's certainly there's much more you can get your teeth into here than you can with, well, certainly any blockbuster of the modern day that I can think of. Even though they're trying to go for these kind of concepts, they don't normally get anywhere near them in the way that Verhoeven kind of just sort of sneaks in through the back door in a lot of his best work, which he does in at least 3 of the films we'll talk about here today. So yeah, it just works on pretty much every level that it's trying to work on, and can't really say much fairer than that for a film. So yes, very good, very good.
Unfortunately, I do have to acknowledge its existence, but don't watch the remake. Oh, please, do not watch the remake. It's appalling. Again, misses the point, like the sequels tend to do. Also, it has an elevator that goes to the centre of the planet. It's beyond stupid.
Yes. It's not like we keep anything important and or hot in the centre of our planet, so that's fine.
Apparently that's in there because Len Wiseman thought that was a practical thing to have, given that the rest of the planet was difficult to travel because of poison in the air. But solid iron core, liquid metal outer core. No, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to take myself down that rabbit hole. I'm going to save yourself and me. Save yourselves and me. Right. Before we move on, Scott, one last thing. Where do you stand on the did it happen thing with Total Recall? Are you happy for it to be ambiguous?
I'm happy enough for it to be ambiguous. I mean, obviously what's happening on it is so out there that it would be kind of hard to believe taken on face value, but there's enough evidence that you could support it one way or the other. I'm probably being a bit more realist, perhaps. If you forced me at gunpoint, I'd say it's probably just Doug Quaid being quadrispazzed on a life plug in the Recall Corporation's headquarters. But yeah, you could catch me on another day and I'll tell you that no, he did actually discover that bastard knows it makes air but wouldn't turn it on. Yeah.
This time I was much more firm in my belief that it actually happened, because the fact you're seeing Richter and everybody and their actions and conversations outside of what he could possibly experience.
True. It didn't actually happen. It didn't actually happen. It's just a film.
Scott,
no, have I misunderstood
don't ruin
the
it
question?
for the kiddies. Right.